when it comes to defining who you are as a man, defining your values, I think it's having a clear vision, knowing where you're going, living by standard core values. So, having a definite aim in your life, a definite purpose, stacking consistent victories, realizing that yesterday's miles don't matter, mastering and overcoming your vices, having a clear connection with the voice, that's God's voice, and then living your life's vocation. So these are the 6 V's that we do inside of the High Value Man Accelerator.
Tell me about this daily 5.55. What's that all about? Where'd you come up with this idea? I saw that there was a 4.44. Was there a 3.33? And where does this lead us?
Yeah, man. So the 5.55, that's for the month of May, 5th month of the year. And it's my daily price paying, the sacrifice I'm paying. I've got some big things I'm asking for coming into my 40th year. I got my birthday coming up in September. And so I got some birthday wishes. And I know that as the exchange happens in the universe, you got to pay a price. And so I started paying the price last month with a 4.44. May's the 5.55. June, I'm not going to do 6.66 every day, but I have got a marathon, half marathon lined up. And then July, I'm committed to doing 7.77 every day. And then August, September, prepping for an ultra marathon. It'll be happening on my birthday coming up in September. So I'm training for an ultra marathon in the fall and then a 100-miler at the end of the year. So that's the training reason. But also, man, I'm asking for some big things. So I know I got to pay a price.
Epic, dude. And 5.55. So that's 5.55 miles that I think I've heard you run it in 55 flat. Is that like goal?
That's a decent time. Yeah. So that's like a 10-minute mile per hour pace. And so that's like a decent, I turned it into a little of a game, man. When you run every day, it's boring. It's like, so I'm trying not to look at my watch. I'm trying to just to find a good 10-minute pace, look down, get close enough to it. And like, that's a win to me. But yeah, I think fastest is like sub 8 minutes for the 5.5 miles. But on average, it's between 9 and 11 minutes.
Yeah, that's epic, man. Have you always been a runner?
No, I was the guy for the longest time that liked to pick up heavy things, put them down, pick them up, put them down again. I've had 3 ACL replacements, and then I was at a mastermind with Bedros in end of 2019, and he was sharing this war story of running his first marathon on 6 weeks of training, and I was like, man, Bedros is built like a gorilla. And if he can run a marathon on 6 weeks of training, I can run a marathon. So it literally inspired me. And so I signed up for a marathon on New Year's Day, 2020, started training for it, fell in love with it, ran my first marathon, and then have been a runner since 2020.
What are you getting out of it, man? How's it changing you? Much like you, I got a background in picking up heavy things and putting them down. I competed as a bodybuilder, but I love seeing guys like, I know you were part of Weatherford Circle. I love what Itzler's doing, man. Yes, even Barr, dude, Nick Barr, like in my opinion, he's probably got the best hybrid, right? Like, dude is still jacked and he's crushing these marathons. What are you getting out of long distance running?
Yeah, man, I gotta say it's my time with God for one. It's just me and no music. I'm just getting out there, getting into just the rhythm. It's painful and it's boring is probably the first part. The first 3 miles, no matter how great of a runner you are, suck. And so it's like the first 3 miles, you're just kind of getting into the rhythm of the negative self-talk, then shifting. And so it's every day. It's a new opportunity for me to face my demons. It's a good way for me to strengthen the muscle of doing hard things, of things I don't want to do because I still don't like it. Especially running every single day. Now we're going into 60 days straight of nonstop, minimum 4 miles per day. And my body hurts, so I don't feel like it. So it takes 3 miles just to get to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm finally warmed up and this is actually enjoyable. So I think more so than anything, it's a moving meditation. I have a hard time sitting still. I do meditate, but this is the moving meditation. It gets my synapses firing. I'm always getting a download from it. And so it gets the, the content, the creativity, just working and flowing. I get a lot out of it. But I'd say that the biggest thing is it flexes a discipline muscle of doing what I don't want to do and knowing that the race never ends as a man. I think probably the greatest thing that I'm accepting in this season of stepping into 40 of maturity is that, man, it never ends until it ends. And I got to fall in love with the fact that life is an endurance sport. It is like getting up every single day, tired, fatigued, and exhausted from yesterday, still putting a smile on your face and getting out there putting the miles in.
No music, man. For 60 days straight, you've been running no music, no headphones, just you and God.
Yeah. And the crazy in my brain. And so I'd say that, yeah, there's just that we all got it, right? And anybody that says they don't talk to themselves, don't have those crazy thoughts, It's like, oh man, we're running this reel again. Okay, cool. And so I'll run it out. And then, mile in, 2 miles in, that voice starts to disappear and it's then the download.
Have you heard the voice quiet over the 60 days? You obviously know the type of work that I do and the men that we coach with. We have recommendations in our program that we try to get these guys to do a 30-minute walk daily, no phone, no distractions, no phone going to the bathroom. I think a lot of times our quickest outlet or that quickest way that we eliminate that voice is by distracting ourselves. And what I've realized in 4 years of really being on this journey is that voice gets more quiet the more you listen to
Yes.
it.
Yep.
Curious how that has been for you.
More you listen to it and also realize that voice doesn't define you. That voice is some old pattern that's run around your brain. Typically, those are the belief systems that we adopted from mom or dad or neglect from mom or dad. And it's this old broken record run around our brain, but it doesn't define who you are. And so I think I let the voice run. I'm working on being the observer of my thoughts where, that's not me. I get to define and decide what the voice really is, but it does get quieter. It's like a dog, right? It's a dog that's barking and it's got the bad behavior. It's got that little tick. If you ignore it for long enough, it will keep barking, but eventually it's like, all right, I'm not getting the attention that I wanted, so I'm going to stop behaving this way. So yes, the voice does silence over time.
Dude, that's a great analogy, man. I've never heard it phrased that way, man. That's amazing, dude. Well, let's go back here a little bit. Obviously, we're talking about some of the current things you got going on. You mentioned, the 40 coming up. I want to obviously talk about some of the things you got lined up there. Definitely want to talk about your faith as well, if we can make that into the conversation. But let's go back. Let's go back to the origin story here with Erin. We got this massive coaching company now, the High Value Man. I know you've had some incredible partnerships with guys like Bedros and Ray and kind of some of those projects. Let's take it back to the point in Erin's life, though, when he had, whether it was a wake-up call or kind of an awakening that I need to start leveling up and actually putting work into being a man, because just the fact that I was born a male doesn't mean I'm actually going to become the man that I was destined to be. So where was that kind of pivotal point in your journey?
Yeah, it was almost 10 years ago. So it was on the cusp of my 30th birthday. My 30th birthday actually had my aha wake up moment. But there was 29 years before that where I was just a degenerate. So my upbringing, I was raised by a single mom. I had a father figure that was a total deadbeat. Second father figure was a drug addict, died with a needle in his arm. Third father figure, and my mom was married to my mom for about 14 years. 11 of 14, he was lying, cheating, and had a whole other family on the other side of the country. And so it was just this constant model of masculinity that was the last thing that I wanted to grow up and be. But I modeled it. I modeled it for most of my 20s. I partied, drinking, drugs, porn, all of it, chasing women, the bad boy lifestyle. And it led into a point in my late 20s where I was drinking, I was partying, I was bartending, I was doing all of the degenerate things that I thought was a fulfilling lifestyle. And I woke up on my 30th birthday. So Sunday morning, my birthday was on a Saturday night. And I woke up on my birthday Sunday morning and I ran through like just a week and a half of just bender, just all out partying. And I remember waking up Sunday morning and looking in the mirror and seeing a reflection looking back of every single guy that I resented, hated, frustrated, irritated with, and disappointed with. And I just saw that deadness in my eyes. It was my dad looking back, my stepdad looking back. It was all the failed role models looking back. And I was like, dude, this is who I'm becoming. And it was just a flicker of a moment. And I wish I could say it was like a God moment in that instant where I immediately changed my life around. But it was like a very, very slow dimmer switch. It was from there that the right people, the right places started coming in. And I had an opportunity to coach. And that was really a pivotal opportunity. So I was bartending. And this gym owner came in, Amin Isagoe. He had a gym in Scottsdale called Amin Zone. And he came in, sat at the bar and said, man, I don't know what it is about you, but I'm looking for a coach. You got to have a little experience in martial arts because it's a boxing gym. Would you be interested in coming out and checking it out? Came in and I taught a class. And I just remember the feeling of helping someone else. That was like the real God moment, helping someone else reach their fitness goals. And then from there, it's just been a very slow build over the last 10 years of becoming the version that I am now. But the aha moment was traveling down the bottom of the toilet bowl and just seeing my life circle around and realizing this is not who I want to be. And if I don't do something different, I'm probably going to do a whole lot worse than my dad's did.
Wow. No, I appreciate you sharing that, man, and hearing your upbringing with three different dads in the house, man. Curious how that kind of shaped your perception of men, right? As a young boy, it's kind of this instability of, if any masculine, characteristics within the home, just so much instability there. How did that play a role in your relationship with men as a teenage, as a student, as like, did you play sports, and how did you look at coaches? And even in your early 20s, like, what were the relationship that you had with men that could have potentially been maybe mentors or leaders or guides for you, showing you the way?
Yeah, man, that's good observation. First and foremost, I didn't trust men. I didn't trust men because my primary caregiver was my mom, who had been physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually abused by men. I'd experienced that same level of physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse, being taken advantage of, lied to. And so my framework for what it meant to be a man is that men are going to take advantage of me. I can't trust them. I better take and get mine before they take and get mine from me. And it was just this constant state of not being able to trust anybody. And so if you can't trust anybody, you show up in the world not trusting, first and foremost. And then probably the biggest paradigm shift was, if I can't trust a single man, I can't trust myself. And so my 20s was just about constantly self-sabotaging, the drinking, the partying. I'd be in a relationship with a great woman, and then I'd sabotage, I'd cheat on her, I'd lie, I'd mess around, something like that. And it was just this constant pattern of just repeating the same behaviors that were taught to me. But the biggest thing of growing up in a household without a strong father voice, a good male role model, a man of integrity, is that boys learn everything through modeling. We learn everything through modeling masculinity. And so I modeled the behavior of what I saw. And so I thought that's how you had to be a man. And so I lived that way. And so the shift over the last 10 years has been realizing that I get to build better relationships with men, but all that relationship first begins with first trusting myself, changing the paradigm, changing that broken record inside my mind, and realizing that if I show up and trust myself, I become the example, I become the high value man. I get to be that for others, and then I get to get it reflected back to me as well.
Now, is this self-sabotage behavior going, like, is that happening at a conscious level? Like, are you aware of the lack of self-worth that you have towards yourself, or are you acting in an unconscious way that is leading to some of these destructive patterns?
Yeah, man, that's such a good question. There's so much depth to that. I think that it happens both consciously and subconsciously. I think it gets to a certain point where your self-worth is so low, where you realize this is just who I am. I'm a deadbeat because my dad was a deadbeat. I'm a loser because my dad was a loser. I don't have any other options because I don't see any other way out. I'm broke, I'm poor, I'm impoverished, whatever it is. And so you just start accepting that that's the life you're in. And then you start following down that life track. You think about gangs, right? Why boys fall into bad behavior. It's because we model masculinity. It's like, all right, well, if that's the direction that he's going, and he's a person that's older than me, I look up to him for wisdom, so I'm just going to follow in that same track. It's why so many young men desperately need mentors, models, and better teachers in their lives, but they just don't have it.
Do you think that's a real epidemic in single mother raising of young boys, right? Maybe you heard something like this, right? Men look like their dads. Oftentimes the first son is going to look a lot like his father. And it's like, if the dad's been a deadbeat, maybe he's cheating on the mom, maybe he's kind of been an absentee father, that's mother, maybe not knowing what she's doing, how she's imparting some of these, limiting belief systems, but, oh, you're just like your dad. Every time I see you, I see your father. Talk about that, man. Like how having the lack of a father can lead to some of this low value self-worth that we see in ourselves.
So much there. Well, so my experience with my mom, we've been rebuilding our relationship very intentionally the last 10 years. And I'd say that probably the biggest downside to being raised by a single mom, especially a single mom that has been taken advantage of by low value men, is that she imparted her own prejudice, belief system, fear, anxiety, and anxiousness onto me, her son. And so, it was constantly like, don't be like your dad. Don't end up like your dad. Don't end up like these other men. And so what that implants in a young mind is that the masculine traits that all boys identify with are inherently wrong, because your primary caregiver, your mom, is speaking into you not to be a certain way. How confusing is that? So you grow up, you've defanged yourself, you've declawed yourself, you know that you want to pursue women, you know that you want to be a man, but you don't trust men because your mom doesn't trust men. You don't have a good model, and you don't know how to actually become a man. And so it creates this constant insecurity and really anxiety inside. And I felt that for most of my 20s. I think my burning question in my 20s is, am I doing this right? Am I doing the whole being a man thing right? That was like the burning desire in my 20s, just to be able to answer that question. And the way that I sought to answer that question was by all of the self-seeking validation from the exterior. So I'd find a beautiful woman, I'd pursue her, I'd chase her, I'd conquer her. I cracked the algorithm on Tinder and Bumble back in those days. I was bartending, I had a Harley. I figured out all the things to be able to attract the woman. I could never lead her though. I could maybe keep her around for all of 60 days, maybe 90 days, and then I'd burn it down to the ground. Because as soon as we got to intimacy or real need to lead in a relationship, I never saw the frame beyond that. So it's constantly repeating the same cycle, blaming, being the victim, or just completely distracting with drinking, drugs, porn, whatever it was. And so it was the same cycle. And what I noticed during that phase is, as I started becoming more aware of it, is that I had literally reached the point in my maturity that all my fathers had. And so I was just repeating the exact same behaviors that my dads did.
Dude, this is so good, man, because I think where we're getting to is like so many men hearing this right now are probably like clicking, like, yeah, this is me. You know, maybe they're struggling with some of that conscious low value self-worth here. So getting back to your story. So we're decade ago, 29, we kind of wake up, we're that toilet kind of moment. Kind of our life is kind of flashing before our eyes. Like, is this where I'm going? Like, is this where everything? You find this gym though. You find this. Did he begin to serve as a mentor to you, or what I actually heard you say? He sought you out as a coach, right?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a divine appointment. It was one of those right place, right time opportunities. I was definitely, I'd say, I was motivated by women at the point. So I was bartending. I was living a lifestyle in Scottsdale. I was bartending at True Food, and right across from True Food was Lululemon, and every hot girl works at Lululemon. And so I had this relationship with all the ladies came in. I got them, the cocktails. I got them hooked up on food. So I had a really good working relationship with the Lululemon gals. And all the Lululemon gals were working out at this new gym. I was like, well, this is cool. I want to meet a Mrs. Right. I was in the season, and I've always been very motivated. I think this is also one of the big awarenesses, been motivated by a beautiful woman. And so I found myself teaching these classes, and I think that was really where God was using one thing to gather my attention, as he does with all of us, right? Pulled me in, and I started teaching these classes. And what I didn't realize is it wasn't necessarily that the gym owner, Amin, was pouring into me and mentoring me. It was more so that I was putting myself in a situation for my gifts to come out. My gifts of being able to be in service of other people, to be able to inspire people with fitness, and to be good at something physically. And so I think those are fundamentally one of the breakthroughs that men need to have as they're stacking new skills and new wins. Is you got to get fit. Like, you got to move your body, right? All of our breakthroughs happen first physically, and you got to be in service of other people. Inside of a gym environment as a coach, those come in hand. You're in a positive environment. You're not at the bars drinking. You're moving your body physically, and you're helping other people reach goals. And so that was the formula to my success.
Yeah, man, I love that you say it began to put you in positions where your gifts could begin to come out. I guess the question here would be to the guy that's maybe struggling with some low self-value worth here, right? Is that the key to getting out of it? Obviously the fitness, right? Get around mentors and so forth, like the tactical stuff. But sitting underneath that, is there like, you got to start operating out of your gifts as opposed to whatever else that you're doing? Like, if you're struggling with worth, it's probably because you're not giving value into the world. So is that a starting place for most men? And if so, how do we begin to figure out what our gifts to the world are?
Oh, that's good, man. I'd say, the starting point is get in the gym. Get in the gym, get around other men. That first and foremost, get in the gym, get around other men. If you're got some pounds to lose some pounds. If you have some weight to put on, build some muscle. Like, that is a fundamental starting point, is get physical first and foremost. And then once you're getting physical, I believe as that's like paying your price. I'm paying my May price at 5.55 every day. That's when I think God starts to whisper to you and start to get your attention and start to say, give you other opportunities, those visions, that self-confidence. Your first of all, your chemicals are firing correctly, dopamine, serotonin. You feel good about yourself. And so you're more in a state to receive that abundance. But you're finding your gifts, I believe, comes from also knowing your pain. And so the process I take my clients through is your purpose is deeply connected to four things, four P's. First, your pain. The pain that you've walked through in your life, the trauma that you have gone through that you hope nobody else has to go through, is connected to your purpose. So my pain, I grew up without a father figure, raised by a single mom. I didn't know what it meant to be a man, constantly asking the question, am I doing this right? Didn't trust other men, so I've built brotherhoods everywhere I've gone. I've made it my life's work in the last 10 years to seek out the very best masculine type of men, extract the knowledge, add value, build a relationship, and seek a high value life. Your pain opens up directly to your passion. Your passion is the thing that you could talk about without a script, The Holy Spirit speaks through you. And I'm passionate about talking about coaching, masculinity, men becoming better men, fitness as the foundation for it. Your pain and your passion are deeply connected. Then it's the play. What would you do for absolutely nothing? What would you do for fun that if you didn't have to worry about money, you would do for free? And when I think about me, it's pain, my passion, and my play is coaching. I lose track of time when I'm coaching my clients. That's when God gets to work through me. I am completely out of my way. Erin doesn't exist. Like, I want to teach other people exactly the formula that I've used for success, because I know when I teach it, I really learn it. And then the last one is your priorities. Your priorities, where do you spend your time? I have all my clients do this exercise. Track everything you do for 48 hours straight. Write down everything in 30-minute increments. 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up. 4 to 4:30, all right, shit, shower, shave. 4:30 to 5, what do? You write all down 2 days straight, and you go back through and you write down a plus next to everything that energizes you, minus next to everything that drains you, and equal next to everything that's completely neutral. You go through your priorities list and you see all the spots in your day that you're on fire. Now you got a formula. All right, man, I love the early morning. I love having that time alone with God. I love the exercise time. I love coaching. Oh, one of my passions is coaching. When I play, like, it feels like this. Now you got the formula for your gifts start showing up. And that's when you go after it all full throttle.
I love that 4P formula to discovering your purpose. Where do you find most guys have difficulty? Pain, passion, play, or the priorities? Like, which one presents the biggest challenges to men in this process?
Pain and play, right? So they've been afraid to step into the conversations, those caves where all of those fears and anxieties and guilt and shame live. When I'm talking about pain, like, you got to get to the point where you're like, man, I was molested in the back of a van when I was 4 years old, and it was a terrifying experience, because I trusted this older boy. I was entrusted to him, and here I was being taken advantage of. And it happened on multiple occasions. And you get to the point where, like, I can say that with zero emotional charge. You're free of it. And you can say it to the point where it's like, I'm so grateful for the opportunity, because it also allows me to recognize in other men when something like that happens, and be able to call forward and remind them that that does not define you. That defining moment, that horrible tragedy that happens to me, that I hope happens to nobody else, is also one of the pivotal reasons I'm in this line of work. So pain. Most guys don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about their dirty little secrets and the shame cycle and the porn pages or the fetishes that they're into or the affairs that they've had, the drink and the drugs, all that stuff. If you can't talk about the things that you don't want to be on Instagram, or your grandma or your mama to see, or someone else to find out about, you're still living in the darkness. But your pain becomes your purpose. Your misery becomes your ministry. So when you get to the point where you've got a shared relationship, imagine your program. One of the best ways you guys get breakthroughs is being able to get it off their chest, right? Talk about it. And you talk about it, and it's like, man, I got freedom for the first time in my life. And you got that freedom, and you realize, cool, now what? Yeah, so the pain is the first part. And then getting guys to realize that at some point in their life, they had great enjoyment. They enjoyed things. They played that didn't involve chasing tail, that didn't involve drinking or drugs. They used to have grand visions when they were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year olds that maybe were stifled, but they had a vision of who they wanted to be. And you bring them back to that point, and I've got the pain dialed in, their passion's starting to come alive, they're stacking wins, they're getting in shape. They realize, oh man, yeah, I want to go back. I want to do that. That's where we get to rebuild from.
What is something that 4 or 5-year-old Erin loved to do that you've had to bring back into your life in this last 10 years?
Oh, that's good, man. These are good questions, man. I'm enjoying this, Frank. Creativity and art. Yeah. So I'm a creator by the end of the day. I love anything artistic. And so being able to be in a line of work where I get to help co-create my client's future and be able to really pour into them. I'm a visionary. I can see things that don't yet exist. And when I get involved with my clients, I think the greatest thing that I get to really pour into them is one of my gifts of creativity, and be able to speak into them, see into them, seed into them a vision for their life that doesn't yet exist. And so that creativity looks like creating their vision for the next couple of years, helping them mind map better relationships, because if you can visualize it, you can see it, you can believe it, you get to receive it. And also living that art of my life right now. I'm in a great relationship, and I'd say that my lady is my muse in a lot of respects. And so being able to be her photographer, we got date nights, and I get to be, just the paparazzi and snap some photos and enjoy that. But art for sure, man, bringing art into my life.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. And I know you have an amazing relationship with Rachel. I've had an opportunity to hear her speak. She's crushing her business, true definition of a high value woman. You talked about her being a muse. What has the relationship with Rachel brought out in you? Like kind of that mirror reflecting.
Oh man, that's such a deep question. Everything that I thought I had already worked through. I tell you what, you will learn, more about yourself, choosing and pursuing a high standard woman, and every woman is high standard. I think it's the men that really lower the standard for women. I think it's our job to lift our women up, to champion them, to really support them. And I think that the reason why we're having such a divide in our time right now, it's 100% the fault of these weak beta men that are afraid of the challenge of a strong, independent woman. And so, what I've learned in the last couple of years that we've been dating, man, is more about myself. The areas I got to deepen, where I got to let go of control, where my ego has stepped in, where I thought I had things figured out. I realized, man, I'm just getting started in this area. But I've really learned how to be selfless in a relationship. I'm learning how to be more selfless in a relationship. I'm learning what love means. I think probably the biggest broken paradigm that I had growing up is my relationship with my mom. So what I thought love was I'm going to do things for you. This was a big paradigm I had about 10 years ago. I'm going to do things for you in the expectation that by my doing it, you're going to do things back for me. So
It's a
it's this
covert contract.
covert contract. Yeah, no more Mr. Nice Guy, right? So I read that book about 10 years ago and I was like, man, okay, this is probably the reason why none of my relationships are really working out and why I'm not getting my needs met. But I learned that from my mom. I learned that from my mom, who was like, man, I love you and I'm doing all these things for you and don't be like these other men. I thought that's just how you have to do it. It's very codependent too. Not only covert contract, but it's a codependent relationship. What I'm learning in this relationship with a very high value woman that's done a lot of work, her maturity far exceeds her age, is that, man, my foundation for love was totally broken. Love is gentle, it is patient, it is kind, it is not controlling, it is allowing, it is supportive, and it is a decision, not a condition. Condition of love is like, I'm going to love you based on you loving me back and you doing these check boxes. Love is decision that no matter what happens in this dynamic, this relationship, how you show up, how you behave, I'm going to respond by choosing to love you.
I love that. Yeah, we've had a lot of great relationship coaches and experts on here, and it comes to, the phrase that what you said is love is a decision, right? I always phrase it like love is a verb. It's like verb requires action. So I can have the feeling of love, but how am I showing up using your language? Right? I'm showing up daily in love is, in service of love towards you. Talk about, you mentioned there that Rachel's done a significant amount of work in and on herself, right? And I think that's important for the men hearing this, right? It's like you guys, if you're consuming these podcasts, if you're following the work that we're doing here, you're doing that self-development work on yourself. I saw this show up in a relationship in my past where I was doing all the development work and the person I was with was kind of staying here, and it created this gap in space in between the two of us. So talk about for the men out there that want a high value woman in their life or want to find a perfect match for them. You got to find that person that's aligned with you spiritually, growth wise, all these kind of same perspectives on the world. Speak to that
Yeah,
a little
man.
bit.
So we talk about this in personal development. Rachel and I have talked about this on a podcast. We call that the gap. The gap is literally when you go on a fitness or personal development journey and you're like, man, I'm shooting for the moon, and your partner stays back behind. The good comparison of this, we're the same age. You remember Slinkies? Yeah. So Slinky, perfect Slinky, they work by momentum, right? And so you got an infinite set of stairs. You put the Slinky on the top of the stairs, and the momentum from one end pulls it down. And you're like, man, I love watching this. I love seeing one end pull the other end forward. So it's this constant forward momentum. That's an ideal relationship where both of you are moving forward with momentum. I'm going to take a step. She's going to take a step. It's going to inspire her to take a step. I'm going to take another step. And we're just constantly pulling ourselves forward. Also, if you remember Slinkies, what tends to happen, especially if you are a guy that's a little bit destructive, you pull the Slinky out and it stretches, right? And then it's completely inoperable. It's a useless toy. And so you pull out a Slinky, you take all the stretch out of it. That's the same thing as if you go on a personal development journey and your partner stays 3 steps behind you. The Slinky no longer has momentum. So now you're dealing with just this lump of steel that is useless. And sometimes what you got to do is you got to cut that right in the middle. You got to cut that cord, and now you have one half of a Slinky. Because what tends to happen is that the person that takes that big leap forward, they end up going back to where they were because they don't want to lose the relationship. And so the gap happens when both people don't commit to a process of personal development.
Yeah, I love that analogy there with the Slinky. And I think one thing Bedros always talks about is that the crab bucket, right? It's like as the crabs are seeing somebody climb, like this kind of happens unconsciously with people in our life. Like as you're growing, if they're not doing the work, and you're like, don't do better than me, come back down here, and they kind of pull you back down to the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the bucket. So this is really, really good stuff here, Erin. I'd like to take a slight transition here and kind of get into what is a man, what is a high value man. You talked about 10 years ago, you kind of started to ask these questions like, am I doing this right? Like nobody ever taught me these things. Let's start by defining, if there's even a way that we can do this. What does it mean to be a man, or even taking a layer deeper with your work? What's a high value man?
There's so many ways to answer this, right? And it is ultimately up to you and your relationship with God. And so I think ultimately, first and foremost, is a man from a biblical standpoint is very clear. It is our job to protect, to preside, and to step in the gap. To step in the gap of whatever is needed. So men are inherently leaders. Men are inherently the ones to go first. Men are inherently the ones that are going to take the bullets to push a mission forward. And so I think fundamentally that's a framework. When it comes to defining who you are as a man, defining your values, I think it's having a clear vision, knowing where you're going, living by standard core values. So, having a definite aim in your life, a definite purpose, stacking consistent victories, realizing that yesterday's miles don't matter. Like that is a principle that every man needs to adopt, is that yesterday doesn't matter. It's only about today and moving forward. Mastering and overcoming your vices, having a clear connection with the voice, that's God's voice, and then living your life's vocation. So these are the six V's that we do inside of the High Value Man Accelerator. But first is clarity of vision. Like every man's got to know where he's going and have a game plan to get there. Live by core values. So this is, again, the committed man versus the conditional man. The conditional man is like, you know what? I don't really feel like it today. I'm kind of tired. Or you know what? I'm not really going to pour into my loving relationship because she's in a bad mood or it's that time of the month. I'm going to be influenced rather than being influential. And so a core value-based man knows who he is because he declares who he is. Then the victories are, man, I'm constantly getting better because yesterday's miles don't matter. It's only about tomorrow. It's only about where we are right now. And it's the fact that I got to be conditioned physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because there's a battle coming and there's already a battle here and I got to stay in shape for it. And then realizing the vices will take any man down if he doesn't understand what they are, how they control him. The movement that you're doing is so powerful because I think probably the hardest vice for men to overcome is that vice of distraction of the woman, because it validates them from a physical standpoint. All right, I'm kind of getting a woman. It makes me feel like a man, but it is the shallowest opportunity of relationship, and it just sucks their life force from them. And then understanding what their purpose, their calling, their vocation is, and having a deep connection with God. So that's my impression of what it is. And it was the opposite of what I had before. I had no idea where I was going. I let the wind blow me everywhere. I didn't live by core values. I was very conditional and non-committed. I lived in vices. I was like, all right, how do I vice stack this weekend? Like, what drugs can I do while riding my motorcycle 120 miles per hour? And I'll be on Tinder and Bubble to really just maximize the weekend. So,
dude, I love that 6V framework there, and yeah, man, the vices, dude. That's obviously where I planted my flag, 3.5, 4 years ago. I think John Eldredge, says it the best, right? What makes pornography so destructive and dangerous with young men is the fact that it gives you everything you desire from a woman without requiring you to step up as a man. It's like we can get this sexual satisfaction. It's not even that though. It's like the science is showing that it's not even satisfying us sexually. It's more on this neurochemical kind of escapism,
dopamine,
kind of sedation side. But it warps the young boy's mind because that's their early introduction to sex education, right? The average age of first exposure right now is 8 to kind of 11 years old. I don't want to hijack the conversation and take us too down a hole there. I want to get your thoughts, or not your thoughts, but kind of your process on maybe vision. I don't want to unpack the entire course because obviously if guys want to work with you, I want to lead them to you. But I see a lot of guys struggle with vision, right? We have a big vision kind of casting assignment in week 2 of our program, because I think the big part of overcoming a pornography addiction is going to be crafting a vision for the man that is porn free. I think most people think of a vision as like a checklist of goals. I want to make X amount of dollars. I want to lose X amount of weight. I think you got to go layers deeper. Like you talked about maybe the steps to doing that. I talk about the identity of the man, casting a vision for the identity. So walk us through, maybe your framework or tips on helping guys cast a big vision, clear vision for their life.
Yeah, I love that, man. And it's I've borrowed it from a lot of coaches over the last 10 years. My first vision assignment I wrote in let's see, that would have been 2017, and that was when I was a few years into personal development. I realized that I needed a better framework for my life. Actually, the very first one I wrote was in 2014, and I wrote it with a Sharpie, and I wrote down like just what I wanted. And it's such a powerful tool because at least it gives you a direction. But I think a really good vision assignment is far more than goals. Like you want to taste it, you want to touch it, you want to smell it, you want to experience it, you want it to raise the hair on your arms, you want to be able to predict conversations like this. I said 7 years ago, the life that I want to have is having creative, collaborative conversations with men on a mission to change the world. That was a framework for what I was searching for. And here we are right now today. It is May 30th, and I'm here hanging out with a friend, and we're both going to be 40 in this cup and fall. And it's like, this is the vision come to life. I can taste it. I tasted it back then. But your vision has got to be palatable. It's got to be something that deeply moves you because you're going to face conflict and challenges and the vices. And if you fall on default rather than design, you're always going to go back to the old way.
Oh, dude, I love that, man. Taste of vision. It's got to become palatable. That's powerful, man. Speaking on this high value, man, I feel like we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about the red pill community. I don't know how much you know about red pill ideology. Is it something that you're
A
aware of?
little bit, but fill me in as we have the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, high value man, like that's your coaching business. It's been a part of this red pill movement for a very long time. I want to read you actually a Twitter post that kind of was sent out by Rollo Tomasi. Rollo Tomasi is kind of recognized as the godfather of the red pill space. He wrote The Rational Male many years ago. And the whole red pill community talks about becoming a high value man. And they kind of position it as like a high value man is almost a modern day king. And it's his right to sleep around with as many women as possible. And I know that goes against a lot of the values that you hold. But Rollo had this tweet a couple weeks ago. The quickest path to becoming a high value man. I want to read these to you, and I just want to get your thoughts on the first three, because I actually agree with 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's the first three that really made me cringe. Number 1 is do not get married. Number 2 is avoid family creation. Number 3 is vasectomy in your 20s. Those, I don't know how that makes a man valuable, but the next 5 are good. Live consistently, eliminate all sedations, learn game and networking, play to your strengths, build wealth, and resist easing up on your focus. It's the do not get married, avoid family creation, and avoid or get a vasectomy in your 20s. And when he's challenged on that, it's because even the possibility of having a child in his eyes takes man off his mission of creating as much wealth as he possibly can. So it's really focused and centered. This ideology is on like, make as much money as possible. And when you become this high value man, 6 foot, 6 figures, 6 pack, then you can go sleep with as many women as possible. But the women must remain, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like, they can only be with you, but you can be with as many women as possible. So yeah, just your overall thoughts on where's this leading, man?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot there, right? So this is where I believe that uh, the devil will distract us with things that sound appetizing and really prey on distraction and weak. And so, from a standard and a principle standpoint, this is the opposite of biblical masculinity, right? Because, God designed us to be fruitful and multiply. And so he didn't make us to be, from the standpoint of shooting blanks. Like the reason that we are built on this planet from a biological standpoint is to procreate, be fruitful, be multiply. And real wealth is not about the money you make in your lifetime. Real wealth is about the education, the mindset that you pass on to your children's children, and the wealth that you let them inherit. Like I'm thinking multiple generations deep. The conversations Rachel and I have, they're not about the money that we're making in this lifetime because we're gonna make mountains of it. But I want to think about the compound, the lifestyle, the legacy, our kids, the grandchildren that are going to inherit our mindset because we decided to be the 1%, the type of people that are going to define rather than live by default. And so this whole framework for this red pill, first and foremost, is like the antithesis to biblical masculinity. And so I say that would be a challenging standpoint. Is that what you want? If you're not serving God, you're serving something else. And I think that that would be something to explore first and foremost. Second piece of it, I'd argue that whoever really laid this out, they probably at some point had a relationship with a woman that challenged them, left them, and broke their heart.
Here's the interesting thing. Here's the interesting thing with Rollo is he's actually married for 27 years and has children.
Man, I tell you, I take advice only from the people that have what I want. And so I give that advice to everybody. I says, you know what? I may not have the exact lifestyle. In fact, if I don't have exactly what you want, don't take my advice. So I tell that to anybody is if that person who is giving you advice isn't living the model that you want to have, like, don't take their advice. Don't take their advice because then it's just theory.
Amen to that. Yeah. I mean, that in of itself, like, is a big red flag, right? Is I'm going to talk, I'm going to prescribe certain, certain ways of living here, but then behind closed doors, I'm living in a completely different life. That'd be like
How
you and me
interesting. So
saying,
do his kids know that he kind of regrets having kids, or
I don't know if it's I don't think it's a regret to him. Like, here's what I don't understand is like, I don't even know, like, what is his intent with with teaching some of these things? Like, cause I've never heard him say his children are regrets. Like, he talks about his daughter's like a high school, college senior and is like engaged to get married. So yeah, it's just one of those things, man. Like the high value, like, there's a massive community of men that are being led by this destructive. So for the guys out there listening, like, comes down to these biblical principles, man, and living a life of honor and integrity. So, Erin, are you open to talking about your faith journey?
Yeah, yeah,
I
absolutely.
know it's something, at least from what I've heard you talk about and shares, it's kind of new in your life. So can you share us, how you came to where you are in your faith?
100%, man. I had a very colorful past. I've tried all the other spiritual check boxes. I think that what I'm very confident in saying is like, man, if you've thought about other spiritual ways, I've probably done this. I've done plant medicine, Buddhism, yogic practices. Very open to it. I think that God will use a lot of doorways to get your attention. And none of them gave me the same level of fulfillment that I'm currently finding. And also, I didn't see the framework and the lifestyles of other men that I wanted to model. And so my come to Christ moment has been happening over the last year and a half, and it was really at the catalyst. Rachel and I growing deeper. So we were long distance at the time. She was living in Dallas. I was living in California, and we're doing a long distance thing back and forth. And at the time, I was coming off of a season of spiritual checkbox rather than religious. And I was really searching for a relationship with God. And so I was using really every modality that was at my disposal, from plant medicine ceremonies, to yoga, to breath work, to just, I was really looking for the right opportunity. And her and I would get in some dialogue. She was raised Christian, and she said, you seem to know a lot about the Bible, but have you ever read the Bible? And I was like, no. And I hate losing arguments and discussions. And so it challenged me in that day to start reading the Bible, because I at least wanted to understand what it was that I thought I knew so much about. It was very arrogant. I think anyone knows enough that that book is about a man that lived over 2,000 years ago, and people are following him. And so that was really the context I had. So I started reading the Bible. And over the course of a year, the words started to speak into me. God started to reveal more of who He was just through the process of reading it. And then she challenged me again with another question. You know a lot about Jesus, but have you ever tried to develop a relationship with Him? I was like, no. I went to church. I was raised Catholic growing up, and that was just stand up, sit down, kneel, and it was just all this dogma and doctrine. There was no real relationship inside the religion, and so I sought to, inside of the reading, started to build a relationship with Jesus. And so I prayed to Him, and it was awkward in the beginning, but then it just started becoming much more comfortable. That happened. And in the same season, I was realizing that the framework that I was really modeling, the lifestyle that I was living in California, was not the model for masculinity that I wanted to have for future family. Her and I were getting closer. I saw marriage on the cards. I realized that this is the woman that I really wanted to pursue. And she brought me to church one time out here in Frisco in Texas. And I saw something for the first time in 38 years that I'd never seen before. I saw a man, and I saw his kids, and I saw the impact of the decisions he made on a entire congregation. And I saw respect, admiration, honor for the very first time, like all in a moment. This is a beautiful moment. And I realized that there's a framework for masculinity I've been looking for my entire life that exists here, and there's a template for it. And all of them are doing the same thing. They're all following this Jesus guy. And so the church is Elevate Life Church. The pastor is Keith Craft. He's in his mid 60s. He's a gangster. He's probably 6'4", 240 pounds, 20-inch biceps. He's fit. He's an entrepreneur. He's a business owner. So he's got the fitness dialed in. He's got his faith dialed in. His kids. Here's the big aha moment. His 3 kids all choose him His 3 adult kids all choose him. What do I mean by that? They followed in his footsteps, all pastors as well. His son, who's a gangster, Josh Kraft, intellectual, just very stimulating conversations and messages, talking about biblical principles in a way that are very, very digestible. His 2 daughters are also pastors. All right, cool. He's got his family lineage in line. His wife looks at him with respect and admiration. They've got kids and grandkids, and a parish that is just growing over the last 40 years. And then the other thing that really got my attention was that he has built and poured into another son, his son of choice, Garrett Uncleback, former U.S. Navy SEAL, who's my age. And I see this guy who is also leading the men's movement up here in Frisco. And I realized that it's not only his effect that Keith had on his sons, but it's his effect is having on other leaders. And this leader, Garrett, is now building other leaders. So you think about this, I'm like constantly looking for data to validate, any decision. We all are as men. And I saw a blueprint of exactly what I wanted. I want to have generational impact. I want to have legacy impact. I want to change the climate, the territory, the community, the people I'm around in such a positive way that they're willing to move across states, change their lives, follow, and do it all based on somebody else's principles, not someone's personality. And the fact that every one of these men are following Jesus, following the principles, living a life of example where they're not only living in regards to high levels of fitness and finances, but their families respect them. I was like, man, this is the secret sauce. And so that was my come to Jesus moment about a year ago. And so I we bought a house in October in Dallas. We moved from California out here. And I've been involved in church, and it's just been a constant level up because it's a whole nother standard of living when you're taking principles from a book that's written 2,000 years ago and really applying it to your life.
Yeah, dude, I love that so much, man. It runs parallel with kind of, me coming to my faith in 2018. Been searching for 20 years at that point. Every self-development book I picked up, every drug I either smoked or sorted was me searching for something. Like there was an empty hole inside of my heart that only God could fill. And I came to my faith in Christ through strong, powerful men like yourself. It was relationships with guys in the fitness online space and, daily and weekly workouts. And I know you had a conversation with Josh Cachadorian recently. Josh was with me on October 22nd, 2018 in Orlando, Florida on Church Street, where I surrendered my life to Christ. Pivotal moment. His book, The Standard, for me laid out that framework, right? It's like, dude, I'd read 600 books at that point, man. I'd been studying Tony Robbins, all the greats, right? It's like, all these lessons, though, were talked about in this book from 2,000 years ago through how this man, Jesus, was living his life every single day. There's the model. Like, I had the tactics. There's the model that it came from, though. So just live my life trying to follow him. We've heard about Keith on the show here as well. We had Steve Weatherford with us, episode 59, and he talked about the role that Keith played in his life when he was 13, and then when his son was 13, how all that kind of came together. I'm sure you know that story there as well. So that's powerful, powerful stuff, man. What has this last year and a half, like, kind of asking a similar question, from the beginning with the relationship with Rachel, how she's kind of been a mirror to reflect you. What has a relationship with Christ brought in out of you?
Yeah, man. It's welling up emotion, but I'd say that probably the biggest thing is a death to the old ego and Erin and all the versions of me that, are built out of fear and built out of false pride and built out of survival. And so there's just been this constant unbecoming, like almost on a daily basis. And I'd say last 6 months has been the most intense. There's been a season of growth between Rachel and I. There's been a season of growth in the business. There's been a season of growth in the new relationships. I stepped out of a lot of the old allegiances that I had previously because I said, man, I'm going to go all in on this God thing. And so I stepped out of the project, stepped out of the Squire program. And so the previous life that I built my reputation on over the last, part of the reputation over the last 4.5 years, it's a thing of the past. I mean, I don't respect and love those relationships, but I'm pursuing something that I can't even define it. It's pulled me in a completely new direction. So I think a complete 180 from who I was a year ago. Those close to me, would say the same thing, but it's a total death, man. It's a total death. I thought it was going to be the easy part, getting baptized. And then, you go through that process, like, man, that was the easiest day of being a Christian. Now it's this, living at a higher standard and a level of excellence that truly will never be met. And so that is, part of the fight is that every single day I get to get better.
I love that, dude. I love the language around the death of the old self, right? I think you might be able to see it here. So this is the logo to our company, Rebuild Recovery. So it's a lion's face, but then it's in a phoenix. Phoenix is the symbol like of death and resurrection. So our entire, philosophy around, the organization here at Rebuild Recovery is there's got to be this death of the old self. Like that's any transformation. It's going to require you killing off that old identity. But then we don't want to just step you into this weak beta man. It's like, no, we want you to be a lion. I believe all men are called to be lions. There's a territory that's yours to go out there and claim, and we want to equip you with the tools, man. So once again, man, I was fired up coming into today's conversation, and it's just ringing true with everything that I was expecting out of this. But you shared something there I actually wanted to kind of end here with today, that you walked away from the project. You walked away from Squire. I think you had even played a big role in the launching of Truline with Bedros, a couple years ago. How did outside of the faith, how did you know it was time to go all in on the business? And speaking to the audience here, got a lot of young, maybe early stage entrepreneurs, maybe guys that want to get into business, but they got to take care of home first, right? So how does a guy know when it's ready to go all in? And should he burn the boats? Or what's that kind of like point where it's like, okay, we can kill off the old things and we can step into this bigger calling for our life?
That's a great question, man, and it was tough, and I honor that relationship with B so much, and so grateful for the opportunity over the last 4 years. And the great thing is, like, we're on the same mission. We're on the same mission to build better men. We're on the same mission to help guys wake up, and the framework is still there. I've learned so much. The aha moment was really realizing that this next chapter of my life, what I want this next 10 years to be about, is a foundation for family. And I want to do it in such a way that I can have that foundation laid so that my children's children and kids and grandkids really had the best start. And I want my wife to be honored. I want my kids to be honored. And I knew that in the framework that I was in, that didn't exist fully. There wasn't Christ at the center. As great as all of my relationships previously were, I didn't have a strong relationship with faith in those other masculine role models. They're crushing in business, crushing in fitness, crushing in so many areas. But I'd say the framework for what I was looking for didn't have the values. And so the aha moment for any man, you need to really look at what you want, your vision. You need to run it through your core values, and you need to make your decisions based on that. If you know where you're going, where you want to be, who you want to be, how you want to show up, what 10 years down the road is supposed to look like for you based on what God has planted in your heart for your desire, then you run through your core values. Who do I want to be remembered as? So what are my core values? All right, cool. I'm going to run all my hard decisions through that. And if it's a hard decision, it's probably going to be worth it. And then when you decide to pull the trigger, you do it gracefully. You do it realizing that God's got your back and that no one's coming to save you. And you can live in the shadow of someone else's wing, or you can go test on yourself and really live your best life.
Yeah, man, that's incredible. Incredible. Last few minutes here, let's talk about the high value man coaching experience, or I'm not exactly sure what we call the program, but who's it for? So for the audience out here, a lot of guys are going to hear this. Obviously, going to resonate a lot with your story. Understand it all starts with fitness, taking ownership of our life. Maybe they're struggling with leading, stepping into some of these pains. Maybe they're struggling with creating a vision or even understanding the values, or maybe they want to start hearing that voice of God even a little bit deeper. So they're curious, like, okay, am I a fit for what Erin is offering? So who's the high value man for?
Yeah, man. So the program started with a who it's not for, and so I have an avatar. I talk about him as being Pam. Pam is the passive aggressive man. He's passive with his hopes, his dreams, his desire. He's passive with women. He's passive with work, and he's passive with the world. He's just living life in passivity. And so the high value man is a solution for any guy that's passive with things that he's going after. He's passive with not knowing how to set a vision, core values, lead his family. And so it's the passive man program to become a high value. Your high value is defined based on your vision and your core values and stacking victories. We get together weekly with a group call. There's initial one-on-one onboarding. I take on a handful of one-on-one mentorship clients, but for the most part, I'm sharing my wisdom, my experience. Fitness is a part of it. But fundamentally, it's a tribe of men just like you have that supports guys on the journey to becoming great men, because the foundation to great masculinity is realizing we model everything. And so you better be in a room where there's greatness around you. Otherwise, you're going to be modeling some bad behavior.
Amen, man. Powerful, powerful. We'll get all of Erin's links, his pages, his IG, the podcast. Amazing stuff, guys. Definitely worth following. Tell us your story of the Fit Beard Man. Where's this kind of handle come from? Was it something like, I'm a good looking dude and I'm fit, so I'm just going to call this? Or is there a deeper meaning behind the handle there?
That's great, man. It was honestly a client tagged me in a post back when Instagram was just on the come up. So this is probably like 12 years ago. And I didn't have an Instagram handle, but they kept tagging me the Fit Beard. And I was running a fitness program, teaching group classes. And so it stuck and I didn't know anything else to name it. And for a long time, I had insecurity around the spelling of my name. So my name is spelled Erin, and it's traditionally in US is that's the female's way of spelling it. My mom, thank you for that. But it's also the Irish way of spelling it. And I always have to defend it. So yeah, it stuck, fitness and the beard, and when I shave, I look like I'm 11, and so I don't plan on shaving anyway. I'm very proud of my beard, and so yeah, it just stuck, man. I've thought about changing it, but at this point, it's now become pretty catchy.
Bro, you're blue check marked at this point, man. You can't change it. No. So it's become a brand, man. And obviously that's a big part of what we're doing here is having kind of a personal brand. So people know you as that. And it's like, hey, there's that beer to do, man. So awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Obviously joining the program, the best way to kind of, go from passive aggressive to the high value man. But for the audience here today, kind of one key takeaway, one step, if a guy's struggling with some of this passivity in his life, what's the first step he needs to take in towards becoming a high value man?
I love that, man. Be the change you want to see. And so be the change you want to see. And one of my core values is action. Action alleviates anxiety. Action alleviates passivity. Action is the first step that you need to do to start making your vision come to life and realize that if you want something different, you got to be something different and you got to take action today.
No, I love that, man. Be the change you want to be. We talk a lot in our program. Most of the men that are struggling with pornography addiction, it's oftentimes it's early exposure. We talk about 8 to 11 years old right now is where the average age of first exposure. So I tell the men inside of our program, become the man that you needed in your life when you were a young boy to keep you from getting addicted to pornography. And in that, you'll find a lot of answers that you're looking for. Erin, this has been incredible conversation here, man. Really, really enjoy you and everything that you're doing, man. And I'm excited about kind of the fruit of this relationship with us both coming up on the 40, all these things that we're kind of chasing the same underlying theme and purposes here, man. So really honored to have you on here today. We like to end every show here with the same question, though. Obviously, the title of our show is called The Superhuman Life. For me, just like you, I try to have belief systems or frameworks that I show up in the world every single day. And I think that's what living a superhuman life has become to me. It's a way that I try to live out my life every single day. And it's coming from the place, Erin, as we talked about, as a believer, I do believe we're here for a purpose. There's a calling on each and every single one of our lives. And I think most believers, most Christians accept that fact, right? God put me here for a purpose. Most of them stop there, though. It's like God gave me this purpose. What are we doing to bring that purpose to the world? How are we showing up intentionally to develop ourselves physically, develop ourselves intellectually, emotionally as well, so we can then bring that purpose to the world in service of others? So that's kind of my framework for living a superhuman life. But as we end today's show, Erin, the Fit Beard, how would you define living a superhuman life?
I would define living a superhuman life as a life where you get to the end of it and you are greeted with, well done, my good and faithful servants. You get to go to bed exhausted and fatigued every single day because you gave a max amount of energy and effort. You are surrounded at your bed and taking your last breath by friends, family, kids, and grandchildren, by so many loved ones, and you fall asleep for the last time, take your last breath with a smile on your face, and you leave just joy and happiness on as a memory for everyone you leave behind. Thinking with the end in mind.
Beautiful, man. We've 203 episodes at this point. We've never had somebody talk about the end of life. And I think that's an important lens sometimes to look through, man. So really appreciate that answer, man. Appreciate everything you shared here today. Guys, make sure to connect with Erin. We got all his links posted down there in the show notes. Check out the podcast, guys. But more importantly, if you're looking at pursuing becoming a high value man, get in his program or at least find out more about what he's doing over there. But we appreciate you guys. Make sure to rate this, leave a review. But more important, if there's a guy in your life that is struggling and needs to break through, and this conversation can and will help him, do us a favor and do him the blessing by sharing today's conversation with him. But for Erin Alejandrino, your host, Frank Rich here, guys, we love you, and we'll see you next week.